Bro, day 7 was supposed to be tough, but not like this. Right in the middle of a crazy monster stampede, the ground started shaking, and out of nowhere, a goblin lord walked in, like he was some kind of final boss. This dude shouldn't even be showing up this early. So, everyone knew something was wrong. The villagers started to panic, getting pushed back hard. But our protagonist, Kamiya, he wasn't just some normal player. Our boy was actually the guy who created this whole game, so he was on another level. When the Goblin Lord came at him swinging that huge mace, Kamiya did something insane. He started blocking all the attacks, again and again, counting every hit because, seriously, if he messed up, he was dead. After he hit the right number, some secret bug he coded kicked in, and suddenly all his attacks were critical hits. With one crazy move, he rushed in and took the Goblin Lord down, saving the base when everyone thought they were finished. That was clutch, not gonna lie. But just beating the boss wasn't enough for our MC. Right after, Kamiya leveled up the base to level 8, made the walls and workshop even better, and then Ginger dropped some wild news. They now had golems that could fight like their masters and even help out around the base. That sounded way too OP, but everyone was hyped. Well, that sounds interesting. And all of this came way before day 1 even started. A couple of years earlier, there was a game called Last, the world's biggest survival game. In this game, people gathered stuff, built bases, tried to survive with their friends, and fought monsters. The best part was how you could do pretty much anything, and the NPCs felt super real. So, the game was always fun and balanced. New events and updates dropped all the time, making things even crazier, and definitely worthy of being the world's best seller. But behind this legendary game was just one big shut-in dude named Kamiya Soshi. He was the last developer. He had been locked in his room, grinding away at the game for 5 years, and 3 years since release. He had just finished the huge version 3 update, making the game better than ever. He even added base level 100, which meant if someone reached it, the season would end with a special story. He picked up his phone, feeling like a boss, and texted his partner that Season 3 was live, but he thought he wasn't stopping anytime soon. He already had new ideas and believed the game could keep getting better. Then, his partner Onohara showed up out of nowhere, asking if the update was really finished. Our boy was a little shocked at how fast he arrived, but the guy explained he had run straight over when he got the text. Turns out, he was the business guy for the game. He congratulated Kamiya for finishing everything by himself, but our MC said he didn't do literally everything. He got some help with music and designs. Still, the business guy thought it was pretty insane that his buddy did most of it solo. Kamiya gave him some credit back, saying the game only made it big because he supported him as a producer. These two actually met back in high school. Kamiya saw Onohara as his lifesaver, since he offered to help produce the game, and even skipped college to do it. He joked that the game was so good it would sell even if people in the world started going dumb. He dropped some good news. The latest user survey gave the game a 98 out of 100. Our hero heard that and said he wasn't quitting until he hit a perfect score. But the business guy said that was impossible, since no game could make everyone happy. But Kamiya disagreed, saying that as long as people took the survey, he could make them all think the game was awesome. The business guy then walked over to Kamiya's desk, asking if he signed those documents from before. Our boy said he did, but since it was a ton of paperwork, he was leaving all the details to him. Onohara picked them up, gave a sneaky evil smile, and joked that he appreciated the trust. Then, out of the blue, 3 huge guys walked in. Suddenly, grinning wickedly, Onohara told Kamiya he was taking the documents and that our poor guy was finished. Damn, that business guy and a slash turns into wicked enemies. At first, our boy was totally confused and asked what he meant. That's when Onohara started roasting him, saying the only thing Kamiya could do was make games. So, he was taking all the rights to Last for himself. Our boy tried to argue, reminding him that he made the game and Onohara would need him for future updates. But the enemies said now that base level 100 was in, Last was a complete game. He also said, from a business side, there was no point in more updates. That made Kamiya mad, and he grabbed his shirt. But one of the bodyguards slammed him to the ground. Indeed, that bitch brought the guards, because he knew our MC would never just agree to this. He said Kamiya's obsession with the game was a problem, since he kept making updates that didn't make a lot of money, and he was too strict, making it hard to sell more merchandise. Now that it was done, he said they could get all the money they wanted without our boy in the way. Now, Kamiya felt betrayed, and he asked why Onohara didn't just talk to him. The trader brushed him off, saying there was no way he would ever agree. He told him to leave, because even that was in the contract he signed. Just like that, our hero lost all his rights to last. He thought about suing, but honestly, it didn't look good for him. On top of that, Onohara even got people online to think the game should belong to him. So now everyone was on his side. Man, our MC was in big trouble now. Anyway, now, Kamiya was losing it in his room, smashing his table in pure rage. Then, he caught something weird on his PC, just sitting there. He got curious and clicked on it. Suddenly, a message popped up, telling him that he should just stay in the game world forever, since he loved the game so much. Our MC was like, what the hell did that even mean? Before he could figure it out, a bright light flashed in front of him and sucked him straight into his computer. Yeah, it was that insane. Next thing he knew, he found himself not at his desk, but inside the game world. And right there to greet him was this tiny fairy assistant, Leafy, who was all about explaining how the game worked. But while Leafy was going on about the basics, something hit Kamiya. He looked down and realized the outfit he had on was for the free trial character. Not cool. The trial dude was the weakest of the weak. 0 skills, garbage stats, couldn't wear any good gear, and honestly, just set up to die as soon as the first monster raid hit. Our poor guy was thinking, yeah, I'm definitely going to bite the dust on night 1. Then Leafy asked him to put in his name on some screen. But Kamiya, being the true developer, remembered there was a secret code to open up the dev menu. He typed it in, the screen flashed super bright, and boom, the cheat actually worked. Leafy nearly glitched out from shock. It finally clicked for her. This guy was the actual dude who developed last. The fairy started blushing so hard it looked painful. But after a second, she pulled herself together and gave a proper intro. She let him know she was a forest fairy. Her job was protecting nature, and she believed even humans were part of nature. So that's why she liked giving advice to people in the forest. Our boy needed answers, so he asked if this was really the world of last. Then, he pretty much confirmed it himself. He wanted her to show him the meta info, but only the stuff for developers. She said that since dev mode was on, no problem. She pulled up all the behind-the-scenes data, and sure enough, it said everything was made by Kamiya. But the game master's name was Wataru Onohara. Leafy was seriously confused and wanted to know who this Onohara guy was. Our boy answered with that broken-hearted look, saying he was the snake who stole last from him. On top of that, Kamiya figured he was trapped in this world because of him, too. Leafy was not having it. She told our MC she couldn't forgive that snake for pulling that stunt. But our MC was just trying to wrap his head around why he was even stuck in the game in the first place. The only thing that made sense was that he absolutely could not let himself die here. So, he made a promise to survive and take back his game from Onohara, no matter what. He asked Leafy if she'd help him, and she said she was in. After that, Kamiya used the warp feature and landed at the base station. Of course, it was only level 1. The cute fairy apologized, saying that was the best she could do. But our protagonist didn't care. Those were the specs he put in himself. Even with all the developer perks, all he could see were the usual game settings. Inside the base, he found a magic stone at the far end of the room. Leafy explained it was called Arcanite, or the Source Ore. This thing could store stuff and turn it into weapons, or items. Big deal for the game. But Leafy thought that the creator didn't even need it, since it was just the tutorial. But our boy stopped her. He wanted to actually go through the tutorial, since monsters didn't show up during the tutorial, and it was the safest time to grab materials. She agreed, since there was no way a trial character like him would make it through normal resource gathering. Even Kamiya knew he was basically a walking target right now. He said they had to get started right away, no time to waste. The cute fairy agreed and fired up the tutorial. So, our hero ran around like a madman, picking up anything he could get his hands on, because he literally knew everything about this place. By evening, he came back looking totally wrecked, but he was determined. He told Leafy they needed to start crafting before it got dark, and she could barely believe he had enough materials. He explained, he made it possible in the specs, even if no player had ever pulled it off before. Then he got to work and crafted a wooden sword and a tiny wooden barricade. He was impressed about the barricade, but deep down, he knew it was unreliable. The trial character just wasn't built to win in the first place. Even if he knew every move the enemies would make, he figured his chances were, like, 2%. Normally, the game would just push the player to buy the full version, but this time, everything was completely different. When night hit, the game gave Kamiya the quest to survive the night. The cute fairy wished him luck. He was definitely going to need it. So, our MC stood out in front of his base, waiting for whatever nightmare was coming. First, he spotted a deer, just minding its own business. But before he could even react, the deer got totally wrecked by a goblin. Those low-level monsters might seem dumb, but they could attack in swarms and ruin your whole day if you weren't ready. Besides, they may attack in groups, so they cannot be underestimated. And our boy, with his trash stats, wooden stick, and no skills, dude was seriously in trouble. The goblin did not waste any time. As soon as it saw our poor guy, it jumped straight at him, trying to stick its ugly sword into Kamiya's neck. Our MC barely managed to roll out of the way. Honestly, the only reason he dodged was because he knew every single thing about this goblin's attack moves. He made it. After all, Leafy, the little fairy, could tell he was only surviving because he was basically the game's walking encyclopedia. Unfortunately, despite knowing the goblin's move, he cannot dodge everything. His speed and strength is too low for that. Back to the story. This goblin was not giving up. Bro, it started swinging again and again, not caring about Kamiya's trashy stats. In the middle of dodging, our hero took a hit, right on his arm. It stung like hell and told him exactly how weak he really was. Even though he saw the attacks coming from a mile away, his body just couldn't keep up. Then, the goblin landed a nasty kick right to his chest, knocking him back super far. He could feel real pain, and when he coughed, a bit of blood came out. Yeah, not fun at all. Our boy realized this was not just some game pain, the hurt was for real. But our MC wasn't about to just sit there and let some loser goblin end the story of the game's creator. He took off running for his base, forcing the goblin to follow him. There was no way he could fight it head-to-head, so he tried something clever. As he jumped toward the small wooden barricade he made earlier, the goblin chased him, not seeing the trap. When the goblin landed, it got stuck smack in the barricade and got itself impaled. That was Kamiya's chance. He knew it was now or never, so he threw himself at the goblin and slammed his wooden sword down with all the little strength he had. It was just enough to crush the goblin's head and finish the fight. The night survival quest was cleared, somehow. Still, breathing heavily and hurting everywhere, Kamiya made a promise to himself. He might be starting from the bottom, but he was not giving up. He reminded himself he was the only person in the world who knew all the secrets of this game, and that was his ticket back to the top. Even if he had to crawl through trash, he was going to take back everything that was his. The next morning, our boy stood by the magic stone, holding up his beat-up sword, just feeling how real it all was. Just then, Leafy popped up, asking if he was headed out to gather more materials again. But Kamiya said nope, yesterday's tutorial grind was enough for him. He had a better idea. He was just going to focus on crafting, since there was someone he really needed to meet soon. The cute fairy then opened the inventory and nearly fainted when she saw just how much stuff Kamiya had managed to collect. In this world, all those random things you pick up near the base get turned into 3 main resources once you toss them inside the mana stone. Leafy broke it down for him. First was mana, which was basically magic energy for people or magic items. Then, there was the element, the stuff you needed for making real things like food or buildings. And finally, there was gold, which you could use to buy special items that you couldn't make yourself. So, our MC got to work. With all his loot, he crafted himself a bow, 10 arrows, a watchtower, and some logs. He would have loved to make something super strong, but his stats were still total trash. So, he had to settle for the basics. Kamiya then told her his big plan. If he really wanted to last more than 7 days, he needed allies. Because, yeah, on day 7, a thing called a stampede hit. That meant a crazy amount of monsters would come running out of the woods. Way more than any normal night, and even players with the full game would struggle to survive. For a trial character like him, it was basically impossible. Nobody had ever done it. Beating the stampede was the challenge that made people want to pay for the full version. Even the cute fairy was kind of freaking out after hearing this. She knew how wild and hard the stampede was. Kamiya asked her what would happen if he died in this world. She was honest. She had no clue, but she knew that NPCs never came back to life, so things would not end well for him either. Still, she promised to help him however she could, even if she wasn't allowed to fight. She said that she might not be much help with advice, but she could gather information for him. That was her big promise, and our boy was super happy about it. He thanked her and said he'd be counting on her. He also told her to just use his name, instead of calling him Creator, but she refused. She was stubborn like that. After that, our boy stepped outside and got to work building his new watchtower. He muttered about how annoying it was that he had to actually be there in person to set everything up. The cute fairy explained that Since the base was still only level 1, he couldn't just drop things in from the map yet. When the watchtower was finally up, Kamiya climbed in and looked out at the world. He was blown away by how awesome it looked, but Leafy only gave him a sideways look, reminding him that he was the one who made all of this. Seeing everything he built, he felt even more fired up to get his game back from that snake, Onohara. That night, he got the quest to survive again. He pulled out his sword and waited for the next enemy. It did not take long. 2 goblins came sneaking out of the forest. Our MC was not surprised. He knew Day 2's fights were different. He grabbed his bow and tried to shoot first, but it was tough to even pull the bowstring back because he had no strength modifiers at all. Still, he had nothing to complain about. He was the one who made the rules, after all. Then, he let his first arrow fly, and, of course, missed. The cute fairy also told him that his aim sucked because the accuracy perks were not unlocked yet. Kamiya just had to take it, since he was the guy who designed every single part of this ridiculous game. But he wasn't messing around this time. He knocked another arrow and took his shot. And boom, he nailed one of the goblins right in the leg. That goblin went down screaming. But our MC was not about to give these monsters a chance. He fired one more arrow and drove it straight into the creature's chest, finishing it off right there. There was still one more goblin waiting. Suddenly, our MC jumped down from his watchtower. Yeah, he was getting brave, and ran toward his last target. After fighting last night, he finally understood how to keep up with these monsters, even though his stats still sucked. If he stayed close, he could actually hit what he was aiming at. So, when he let the next arrow fly, it landed right in that goblin's body. He didn't stop there. He shot again, knocking the goblin down. Then, not taking any chances, our hero walked over and finished the monster off with an arrow straight to the head. That was it. The second night survived. Leafy started dancing in the air and cheering him on, super hyped that they pulled through. But while they were celebrating, a woman was hiding way out in the forest, watching every single thing they did. Creepy, right? The next morning, our MC went out to collect his arrows. He really needed to save resources, because arrows weren't easy to make, and they could break after shooting them. He found 2 arrows that stayed in one piece, but he could only spot one of them. Did he look worried? Not at all. He already had a pretty good idea what happened to the other. Just then, the game threw a quest at him. Go find the missing arrow. He saw a trail leading into the trees, and decided to go after it, with Leafy floating along. He told her to stay sharp while they were in the forest, but she told him not to stress. She couldn't mess with the game's story, and the game couldn't hurt her either. While they searched, our boy started thinking about how important it was to get allies. The game let you recruit special characters sometimes, but you had to clear their quest first. These NPCs could fight or help you build, and you basically needed them if you wanted any chance to win. And let's be real, our MC really needed the help. Meanwhile, that lady from last night, the hunter named Anemone, was hiding up in a tree, watching for trouble. She thought she was in the clear and jumped down when she spotted something strange, maybe a trap. But out of nowhere, Kamiya showed up behind her, trying to tell her they weren't enemies. Did she listen? Hell no. She just bolted, dashing into the woods like she'd seen a ghost. Even our boy was surprised. He never programmed her to do that. That was new. Then, Leafy figured out what was going on. She said that now he was actually living inside the game. The story wasn't following the script anymore. If he wanted to recruit Anemone, he'd have to actually talk her into it, like a real human. That hit our MC hard. Playing his own game was one thing, but doing all this face-to-face was a whole different beast. He started to worry that if he said the wrong thing, these characters might actually turn into enemies. It was real now. Later, back at the base, he finished gathering the supplies he needed. The cute fairy asked if he found enough materials, and our MC said yes, and he was glad no monsters showed up to mess with him. He dropped his stuff inside and said it was time to start crafting. Leafy wanted to know if his plan would actually work, and he said he was the one who made Anemone's whole story, so he figured his idea had the best shot. The hunter girl had always been a hunter, living alone with her dad, and after her dad died, she just stayed in the forest by herself. That was how Kamiya wrote her, but he thought maybe if she could feel what it was like to have people around again, she'd want to join up. Still, he knew things were off script now, so nothing was a sure thing. Time for the plan. He crafted everything he needed: an iron pot, a ladle, salt, pepper, ground meat, and 2 sets of dishes. He started cooking, and it blew his mind a little. He never thought he'd actually be cooking inside his own game. Leafy told him that when his level went up, he could just create finished meals with a click. But our MC said he didn't mind cooking by hand, and the cute fairy realizes that he was pretty good at it. He explained that he lived alone for a long time, so he got good at making his own food. He always shut inside at home, working on last. Back after high school, he used to hang out with Onohara a lot, but that was ancient history now. Man, some memories just sucked. Suddenly, the hunter girl showed up, aiming her bow straight at Kamiya. He put his hands up and told her again they weren't enemies. She looked confused, asking if there was anyone else with him. Then, our hero realized she couldn't see Leafy and told her he was alone. He introduced himself, and she did the same. Then she asked where she was, saying she'd been out hunting, and all of a sudden ended up in a place she didn't know. Our boy told her he just got there too, so he didn't know the area well either. Right then, he pointed to the food on the fire, asking if she wanted some. He said it wasn't poisoned or anything, just too much for one guy. It's kind of funny to see our boy offer food casually, while Anemone still points the arrow at him. Then, finally, she gives up. Kamiya doesn't seem dangerous to her at all. Anyway, after that, our boy handed her a plate and told her it was Salisbury steak, ground beef, onions, breadcrumbs, some seasonings, and grilled up nicely. She took a bite, and her face totally changed. She was so hungry she wolfed it down, while Kamiya just watched and laughed a little. After she finished, she thanked him and said it was her first time eating something like that. Then she asked if she could have more. He said sure, but told her there was a catch. Our MC had a plan, and he was about to play his next move. With little suspicious, she wanted to know what he really wanted from her, and our boy told her straight up that he needed her strength in a fight, since this place was super dangerous. She took a moment to think about it, probably wondering if this guy was legit, but Kamiya let her know that if she didn't want to become a monster's lunch, she had to act like a hunter herself. The system popped up right then, reminding him of the usual quest, survive the night. But this time, there was a twist. If Kamiya fought beside Anemone, and they survived, she would join him for real. Believe it or not, the hunter girl said she was down to fight with him. Our MC looked kind of surprised, but he tried to play it cool. Not much later, 3 goblins showed up in the distance. The cute fairy thought that was all, but our boy was like, bro, that's not it. There was always more hiding out there. And, just like he said, more goblins crawled out of the forest. It was about to get wild. Kamiya got ready for battle and told Anemone that he needed backup. He pulled a sword out of thin air, straight from his storage space, which left the hunter girl super impressed. She started wondering if he was one of those special mana stone contract holders, which, in this world, was basically a big deal. Now, our hero ran at the goblins, dodging their attacks like he'd done it a million times. When he managed to pull one goblin away from the others, he called out to Anemone. She didn't mess around. She landed a perfect headshot and dropped that thing instantly. She was honestly impressed that even while fighting, he was keeping track of both their spots on the battlefield. Things weren't easy for our MC though. He kept struggling with the goblins, and right when he spotted another opening, he called for her to step in again. She didn't waste time and poked a hole straight through a goblin's head. But then, out of nowhere, one goblin knocked our MC to the ground. He was already moving so fast that he managed to kick the goblin off before it could hurt him, and Anemone met the monster halfway, with another arrow to the skull. Now the goblins were pissed. The rest started going after our MC even harder, while a couple tried to chase Anemone. She shot first and nailed one in the chest, but her bow wasn't going to last for another shot, so she switched it up and pulled out her dagger to block the next attack. Kamiya started yelling at her to fall back toward the cabin, telling her she didn't need to finish them all herself. The hunter girl listened and did a sick backflip toward the base. Right, as the goblin chasing her triggered a hidden spike trap. That goblin was done for, and our boy felt pretty proud about his trap-building skills. Now Anemone went on the offensive, and the goblin chasing her suddenly looked like it regretted its whole life. Meanwhile, our MC was having a rough time with a goblin holding a mace. With his trash stats, our poor guy could barely keep up. The goblin knocked his weapon away and was about to smash his head in. But just then, an arrow flew in out of nowhere and nailed the goblin in the face. He was totally shocked. He turned around and saw that the hunter girl had already finished off her own enemy with a dagger and still came in clutch to save him. Not gonna lie, that was insane. So, just like that, Kamiya survived his third night in the game. After the mess, he went back to the cabin to organize their gear using the mana stone. Meanwhile, the cute fairy appeared in front of him with a face that was almost crying because she was worried about him throughout the fight. When they were inside the cabin, the hunter girl finally asked if he really was a mana contractor. Our boy told her that he'd just made his contract recently. Apparently, all the NPCs understand the various player-specific abilities that correspond to game controls as special magic that only those who have contracted a magic stone can use. Finally, Kamiya decided this was his chance. He asked Anemone to join him, since she didn't have anywhere to go, and he needed all the friends he could get. Anemone started talking about the big legend that said people with mana stone contracts had special missions in the world. She figured maybe meeting him wasn't random, and she even complimented his fighting skills. Then she reached out to shake his hand, showing she was on board. The system let our MC know right away that the hunter girl had officially joined his crew. That was a huge win. The next morning, he woke up early and started making breakfast. When Anemone stepped out, our MC almost fainted. She wasn't wearing her combat gear anymore, and she looked absolutely gorgeous. He turned away as fast as he could, hoping she wouldn't see how red his face got. God, he knows that she'd lived in the forest with her dad for a long time, but that really makes her unconcerned about being seen? After that, he told her that they needed to upgrade the base fast if they wanted to survive the worst. He thought Anemone was an awesome backup, but there was no way just the two of them could make it through the Day 7 stampede. Barricades and more rooms were the only way forward. So, yeah, upgrading the base is one of the keys to survival. After breakfast, Kamiya went out to collect materials again, with Anemone tagging along and telling him he was super efficient at it. When they got back, she noticed he looked stressed and asked what was wrong. He explained that they still didn't have enough resources to level up the base. The hunter girl was a little confused about what he meant by leveling up. Our boy broke it down for her. If they stuffed enough resources into the magic stone, it could help them build new stuff and make barricades. That's why he'd asked her to help gather stuff. But even so, it still wasn't enough. He also mentioned there was a big monster outbreak every 7 days, and if they wanted to make it through, they needed to be ready with traps and defenses. Hearing that, the hunter girl said she was going to head out and gather more resources. Kamiya thanked her, saying he'd start thinking of other options too. After she left, he admitted to himself that leveling up was way harder than he thought, even though he'd managed to recruit Anemone so soon. Our guy wished he had some drop rate boost or something. Leafy, always ready with tips, let him know that some characters or magic items could give you better rewards. But his trial character didn't have any of those bonuses. Tough luck, bro. Our boy was stressing out, trying to figure out how the hell they were supposed to level up the base before that insane 7th day hit. He turned to the cute fairy and told her that they needed another idea, and fast. He asked if she could bring up all the developer consoles, and she was all too happy to pop those up, saying it would be awesome if they could just change the game numbers themselves. But our protagonist explained that messing with parameters directly was risky, mostly because the game's AI was always watching and would fix anything that looked off. If you went too wild with changes, the AI might glitch out, and then who knew what would happen? Still, Kamiya knew they were seriously screwed if they played by the normal rules. He started thinking if there was some other way, something only a game dev would know. Suddenly, he remembered a sneaky function from back in the day, instant build mode. This was a test feature where you could just build whatever you wanted, no matter how many materials you had. Then he asked Leafy if they could use it now. When the cute fairy heard that, her eyes got huge. She realized that with instant build mode, the AI wouldn't even try to fix anything, since it accepted dev-level changes. As long as he was running with developer mode, the API should open up for them. API is an interface window that allows programs to link and exchange information with each other. Without waiting any longer, she dove right in. Almost too eager, honestly. She started searching for the access point, and sure enough, she found it in no time. Our boy asked if she could control it from the console, but Leafy said it looked impossible from there. If someone wanted to mess with it, they had to dive in themselves. Before he could even warn her about the danger, she jumped in. Jez, Leafy is such a brave fairy. Inside the system, she started plugging in commands at lightning speed. But then, the game's maintenance AI showed up, thinking she was just some random bug that needed deleting. Leafy realized she was in trouble. So, she moved even faster. Inputting everything she needed to. Just as the AI was about to catch her, she managed to finish her task and scramble back out into the real world. Barely. Phooey. Meanwhile, our hero was sweating buckets by now. He asked if she was okay, and Leafy, still catching her breath, said she was, but admitted that she almost got eaten by the maintenance AI. He wasn't even surprised. He figured the system saw her as a bug, because what she did was definitely not normal. When the cute fairy realized she almost got erased for real, she freaked out. Our guy told her to stick to peeking at the system, from the safe console, from now on, so she wouldn't have to risk life and limb. She checked the system from the console and absolutely lost it when she saw that the maintenance AIs had multiplied like crazy. Kamiya understood right away. There was no way they were getting back in that way again. Then, our cute fairy apologized for messing things up, but our MC said it wasn't her fault, just proof the system was doing its job. Besides, he felt bad for making her risk it all for his plan. He was just glad she made it out safe, and Leafy was so relieved, she ran over and gave him a big hug. Thanks to Leafy's wild move, our hero now had the instant build option. He didn't even wait, he turned it on, and started upgrading the hell out of their base. When Anemone came back, she almost didn't recognize the place. The base was way bigger now, with extra rooms and thick barricades all around. The upgrade even bumped their base straight up to level 3. She couldn't believe the power of the magic stone and said it was amazing. Right then, Kamiya told her to pick any hut she liked, but he said she should probably hurry up and decide. The hunter girl looked confused, asking why he was rushing her. She didn't even finish her question when, boom, a giant beam of light hit the middle of the base. A portal opened right in front of them. He just told her that huts were about to run out soon. He seems like he's not surprised at all, when suddenly a big portal appears in front of them. Sure enough, when the smoke cleared, a whole crew of people was standing there, looking totally lost. There was a kid named Asel and his mom, Lila, in the group. Anemone, being the badass she was, reached for her sword, ready for trouble, but our boy stopped her. The kid, Asel, instantly stepped in front of the other villagers, trying to shield them. Our hero took a deep breath and introduced himself, saying he'd only been living there a few days before they all showed up. He explained that monsters roamed the forests around the base, and every night the monsters would attack. So, if everyone wanted to survive, he needed their help. Kamiya even put on his best leader voice and asked them to work with him, looking and sounding like a real boss. An old dude with white hair, Sylvan, stepped up and asked him if he had just arrived too. Our boy said he'd been guided here by a magic stone. Sylvan seemed impressed and said he heard the legends about magic stones, but he didn't expect to be called by the sorcerer while he was still alive. But then, a big guy named Waldo rushed in, telling everyone not to trust our hero. He said there was a chance Kamiya had dragged them there with some transfer magic to kidnap them. He called over 2 other dudes, and the 3 of them started walking away. Kamiya asked where they thought they were going, and the big guy explained that he wanted to check the place out himself and see if monsters really did show up. He told the rest of the villagers to stay put while he went to investigate. Right then, our hero told Anemone to watch over the new villagers while he kept an eye on Waldo and his guys, who were already heading into the forest like they owned the place. He tried to warn them, telling them not to go too far, but the big guy just ignored him, like a stubborn old goat. The thing is, around the base was supposed to be a resource area, but it was also a danger zone, where monsters could pop up at any time, day or night. Our boy knew that if you wandered too far, the monsters got way nastier, and the game itself made sure you couldn't just skip to another base. Basically, it was all a trap made by the system to keep players from running wild. A few minutes later, Waldo and his crew found a group of bunnies that looked crazy cute, except for the sharp horns sticking out of their heads. One of the guys asked Kamiya if those bunnies were the monsters that attacked the base, and our boy said, yeah, those little guys were definitely trouble. But of course, the big guy didn't buy it, so our MC just shrugged and figured he'd let him find out the hard way. What nobody realized was these bunnies were called Hunter Bunny, and they were not the type you wanted to mess with. They acted all harmless and sweet, but that was just a trick. When their prey got too close, they would suddenly surround it and attack as a group. And that's exactly what happened next. Before Waldo even knew what was happening, the bunnies jumped on him and his friends. The forest was suddenly full of their screams. Kamiya ran over and shouted at them to close their eyes and hold their breath. Waldo was still confused, but our MC yelled at him to do it now. They finally listened, and our protagonist pulled out 3 bottles of pepper and just chucked them at the bunnies. The bottles smashed, spraying pepper everywhere, and suddenly, the bunnies were freaking out and backing off. Then he told the big guy and the guys to run for their lives, but Waldo, being Waldo, had to peek and see what happened. Of course, some pepper got right in his eyes, and he started tearing up like a baby. Kamiya grabbed one of the wounded guys and told them they were heading back to base. This time, nobody argued. They took one look at the bunnies, getting up again, and followed our boy as fast as they could. They made it back to base in one piece, and the hurt guys got patched up right away. After that, people started settling in for real. The villagers split into groups, some working on combat training, and others helping to organize the place. During training, someone pointed out that Waldo was suddenly way more motivated than before. He admitted those monsters were tougher than he thought, but he promised they'd win the next round. While the base was buzzing, Leafy floated over to Camilla and said she was happy they had more friends now. He just gave a short answer, and the cute fairy could tell something was wrong. She asked what his problem was, and our boy nodded toward Assel. See, in the early game, there were always some events set up to teach players the hard rules. The kid was one of those events, a character meant to show everyone that once an NPC dies, there's no coming back. In the story, Assel was supposed to die in the next monster attack, and his mom would grieve, teaching the players that NPCs were irreplaceable. Our boy realized that his fate was about to hit, and he started wondering if he could actually change what was written in the game. After all the training was done, the big guy and the fighters came back super hungry. Luckily, the women had cooked up some food, and soon, everyone was sitting together at the table. While they ate, Assel looked at Anemone and joked about how good his sword skills were. She said his moves were pretty decent, but she also told him his archery was trash and he needed to work on it. The kid got all fired up, but our boy just kept staring at him. He knew Assel was put there to help players learn an important rule. Even if nobody sent him into battle, he would rush in on his own, trying to be a hero, and then he'd die. That's how people learned that dead NPCs didn't just get back up. Waldo then grabbed Assel, patted him on the head, and started talking about how he was finally becoming a man. The kid's mom quickly told the big guy not to encourage that. Assel told his mom that with monsters attacking all the time, he had to learn to fight. His mom said there was no need. Adults could handle it. But he argued back, saying he needed to protect everyone, just like his dad tried to do. Lila told him that his father was strong, but he never mixed up being reckless with being brave. That made our MC stop and think. He finally understood that courage and recklessness weren't the same thing. If he wanted to keep Assel alive, he needed a new strategy, one that actually had a real chance, not just dumb luck. After that, Sylvan joined in, agreeing with Lila that Assel shouldn't be reckless. The kid listened to the old man and nodded. He also said maybe they should all work together to protect the base. But suddenly, everyone realized this wasn't their old village anymore. Right then, he asked Camilla if there was any booze around. Waldo was shocked, asking why the old guy wanted to drink when they were about to fight monsters. Then the old man said that was exactly why he didn't want to die sober. Waldo called that a lame excuse, and everyone started laughing. Our boy said if they survived the night's monster raid, he'd see if he could get them drinks for a toast. The big guy was the first to stand up and celebrate that idea. Hearing that, Leafy floated around him, poking her nose into his business, and she wanted to know what was up. Camilla told her that he just couldn't get over the fact that he was the guy who threw everyone into this brutal survival game. He said he knew it was needed to make the ultimate game, but it still felt rough. She told him she understood, but she also said that none of the NPCs would even exist if he hadn't created them in the first place. Our boy said he didn't want to be one of those trash developers who didn't take responsibility for what they made. Bro, he was seriously feeling guilty, even though he was basically a god in this world. By the time evening rolled around, our hero pulled everyone together for a serious talk. He let the group know that another monster raid was coming, so they needed to go over their formation one more time. He said anyone who wasn't fighting needed to watch the perimeter from inside the base, because safety was never guaranteed. He explained that monsters usually came from one direction, but he warned them not to get lazy, so everyone had to split up and keep their eyes open. For the fighters, he picked out the 3 best archers and said they'd team up under Anemone's command. He told the rest to grab swords and get ready to move up front, working in pairs for better defense. One pair would guard the archers, and Waldo's gang would hold the front lines with their partners. The big guy was hyped the second he heard this. He could barely sit still because he wanted to get in on the action right now. But then he asked who Camilla would be fighting with. Our boy said that Assel was his partner. That little announcement shocked the kid and his mom, and Lila jumped in fast to protest. She said her son shouldn't just be thrown into a fight out of nowhere. Then, our MC told her that he understood why she was worried, but he said being in the back wasn't exactly safe either. He explained that if the kid was ready to fight, then the sooner he got stronger, the better his chances of surviving. He even promised to his mom that he would do everything possible to protect the kid. Still, Lila looked super stressed, but Camilla tried his best to reassure her. Here's the sneaky part. Our MC had a plan. He was putting Assel up front because he knew the system AI would send monsters after the kid, trying to make sure he died. Just like in the original script. He figured if he was right there with him, he might be able to mess with the system and save him for once. It was risky as hell, but sometimes you had to go big. Right then, the hunter girl spoke up next, telling Lila that Camilla was actually pretty good at fighting, and she could trust him. Our boy also made it clear he wouldn't drag the kid into battle unless the kid wanted to go. Before he could even finish his sentence, the kid was already jumping up, saying he wanted to fight and get strong like his dad. Once everyone had their roles, Kamiya gave them a pep talk to get everyone fired up for the upcoming fight. You could feel the nerves and excitement in the air. As night fell, the system dropped the fourth day's quest in front of him. Survive till morning. Again. That game never let up, dude. Soon after, the battle started, and at first, everything was going by the book. Kamiya told Leafy to keep an eye on a cell and to shout out if anything went wrong. Up in the watchtower, Anemone took charge of her squad and ordered them to fire arrows at the goblins. She said it didn't matter if their aim was trash, as long as they could mess up the enemy's formation. While Anemone's archers scattered the goblins, our boy led the assault squad after any goblins who got separated. He told his team to finish the monsters off one at a time, but reminded everyone to stay in pairs for safety. He also told Waldo to make sure nothing got near the watchtower. The big guy said he already knew, acting all cocky as usual. It turned out there were even more monsters this time, probably because the base was a higher level now. But the fighters were actually killing it. Even though it was their first real battle, they stayed in their two-man teams, cut down the goblins, and stopped the monsters from grouping up. Waldo was having way too much fun, chopping through goblins like he was in some action movie. At one point, he noticed a goblin staring off in another direction. He teased the thing for not paying attention and took it down fast. What he didn't realize was that the system had started targeting a cell, making the goblins act weird. Thanks to all the traps they set earlier, the enemy numbers dropped fast. Our hero noticed the goblins were really easy to read this time, probably because the kid was on the field and the system was gunning for him. But this world was not about to make things easy for our boy. Suddenly, the goblins started acting tougher and crazier. The hunter girl picked up on this right away. She saw the goblins moving in a strange way, so she jumped down from the watchtower to join the ground fight. Meanwhile, Leafy stayed close to Aesel, but then she saw goblins sneaking up on Kamiya's squad and shouted a warning. Our MC spun around, but it was too late. The kid had already been shoved onto the ground. Kamiya freaked out and yelled at Aesel to get up. Now, one goblin raised its weapon to finish him off, but before it could, Anemone let an arrow fly and put it straight through the goblin's eye. Here's the insane part. The goblin just yanked the arrow out and didn't even try to attack her back. She was shocked, because goblins usually went after anyone who attacked them, but tonight, they didn't seem to care about her at all. Meanwhile, the big guy was still having the time of his life, until a goblin suddenly tossed him like a rag doll. He was stunned. He definitely didn't see that coming. But, while everyone was distracted, another goblin slipped past and charged straight at the poor Aesel. Meanwhile, Aesel was shaking like crazy. He was supposed to be a fighter, but right now, he just looked terrified. Our boy, who had no chill left, screamed at him to get up and grab his sword. Dude! The kid had about 1 second left before a goblin would slice his head off. So, Kamiya dove in and blocked the attack with his own body. Now Kamiya was in trouble. He was wrestling with this goblin, and the whole time he wondered if the game was actually trying to make sure Aesel died, like some kind of evil fate system. The fight got even worse when the goblin jammed its claws into his shoulder. Our poor guy screamed out loud. It sounded brutal. Bro. While he was struggling, another goblin spotted Aesel wide open and went for him. But Anemone wasn't having it. She jumped in, slashed the goblin, and shoved it to the ground. The goblin tried to get back up, but then, the big guy came out of nowhere, super angry, and punched the thing right into the dirt. He even started talking about how much easier it was to punch goblins, since they were basically shaped like people. Then, our boy shouted at them to get the goblins away from the others. Waldo just went nuts, pouncing on one goblin and beating it to a pulp, while Anemone whipped out her bow and started shooting arrows non-stop. She yelled at the other fighters to push the goblins back, and everyone just went for it. But it wasn't over for our MC. Another goblin got in close. He got to block the attack with his sword. But damn, the power of goblin is getting stronger. He is overwhelmed. So he told Aesel to hit it right on the head. That kid totally froze up. He looked like he wanted to disappear. But Kamiya didn't let him off the hook. He told him this was the moment that would change his whole fate. He asked him if he really wanted to get strong, like his father, or if he was just pretending. That finally got through to Aesel, who took a deep breath and smashed the goblin right on the head. That move gave our boy the opening he needed. He shoved his sword right into the goblin's neck and finished it off. It was gross, but it got the job done. Right then, our hero told the kid that he did awesome. That was some real bravery. He let him know they still had a few goblins left to take care of. So, no break yet. Kamiya, Aesel, and the rest of their crew went all out. fighting together and taking down the last of the goblins. By the end, everyone's swords looked like they'd been chewed up by a dog. But they did it. Even though their swords were cracked because of the fight, the day finally broke, and the survivors started cheering like they'd just won the lottery. Kamiya got a notification from the system saying they survived the 4th night. They headed back to base, and Acel basically ran full speed into his mom's arms. For once, our hero felt like he'd actually broken the game's evil plan and saved that kid. That gave our boy some real hope. He started to believe he could survive the stampede without losing anybody. Too bad he had no idea that the game world always finds a way to mess with people. With the victory, Kamiya managed to level the base up to 5. The villagers were amazed by all the stuff that changed. Sylvan finally saw for himself how strong the magic stone was. Everyone was impressed that they could do all this just by collecting monster drops and supplies from the forest, then using the magic stone to grow their base. Our boy explained to everyone that as the base got stronger, so did the people living there. But he warned them that just sitting around wouldn't make them stronger. They needed training and experience for real growth. He wanted everyone to get ready fast so they could start another round of training. Thanks to instant build mode and their teamwork, they now had more people and gear than anyone should at this stage of the game. They survived 2 more monster raids after that, and every NPC started getting tougher and working together better. Even Acel was leveling up fast and grew into a fine soldier, and after that night, the AI stopped targeting him for death. Time flew by, and before anyone could blink, it was already the 7th day, the day of the stampede. On the morning of the big day, Leela found Kamiya messing with the swords. She told him breakfast was ready, but he said he was busy sorting out which weapons were about to break. He explained that if a sword snapped in the middle of battle, they could all be toast. To make things simple, he tied red strings on all the weak swords. He told one of the passing fighters not to use those swords and to let everyone else know, too. Lila tried again to get him to eat, but our boy said he still needed to check the traps first. Bro, this guy never rests. By evening, our hero called everyone together for one last talk. He told them that tonight was the 7th day, and the stampede was coming. He said this could be way worse than anything they'd seen before. Even the people staying inside the base needed to grab weapons, just in case. He explained the new formation. He was leading at the front, Waldo was behind him, and Anemone was at the rear, with her bow. He told everyone to double-check their weapons. But Acel showed up, holding a sword with a red string on it. Guess someone didn't get the message. Still, he joined Kamiya at the front, ready to go. Everyone got into position, and the nerves started to hit. Right then, our MC told them to close the gates and settle in. The non-fighters sat just behind the gates, holding weapons of their own. Lila stood up to check on her son and freaked out when she saw that the kid had a weak weapon. Not good, bro. Suddenly, the goblins came out of the woods, way more than before, and they all looked ready to kill. Kamiya saw the system warning go red, letting him know this was a giant invasion. The only thing on his mind now? Acel's weapon was about to snap, and the real fight was just getting started. Bro, the second those goblins poured out of the trees, you could feel the panic in the air. One of the villagers straight up started shaking and freaking out about how many goblins were coming for them, but our boy Kamiya wasn't having it. He told everyone not to lose their nerve, since this was exactly the big fight they'd been training for all week. Then he gave the order. It was time for Anemone and the archers to light up those flaming arrows. That's when things got wild. Anemone and her squad all fired at once, launching those arrows right into the middle of the goblin horde. The second they hit, a massive explosion rocked the field. Goblins went flying. Some of them just got completely roasted. Waldo and the fighters cheered, saying these were the best fireworks they'd ever seen. Turns out, our MC had been secretly leveling up just so he could get gunpowder unlocked in time. He said he purposely kept the landmine design super simple, since you only need basic bombs for a bunch of dumb goblins anyway. But Kamiya didn't let anyone relax. He warned the squad to stay sharp, because more goblins were definitely coming. And just like he said, even more goblins came charging out of the trees, looking way meaner than before. Still, he and his crew weren't scared. They met the goblins head-on and cut them down before they could hit the fence. Up in the watchtower, the hunter girl told her archers to let the melee fighters handle the ones on the ground while they shot the goblins, sneaking around the back. Goblin numbers just kept growing, and some even reached the fence, but the non-fighters inside managed to push them away. Honestly, our boy was feeling kind of hyped. The traps were working. The team was crushing it, and goblins kept dropping left and right. For a second, our protagonist started thinking that maybe, just maybe, they could actually win this insane fight. But, dude, The game world loves to smack you the second you get cocky. Right as Kamiya was giving his crew props, a creepy noise echoed across the battlefield, and the ground began to shake. Anemone lost it. She yelled down from the watchtower, saying something big was coming. And then it showed up. A giant, freaky goblin. Stomping out of the forest, looking pissed as hell. Our boy totally froze. That was a goblin lord. A boss monster. Way too powerful for a Day 7 stampede. To make things even worse, it brought a whole new army of goblins with it, and its roar pumped up all the other goblins, making them even tougher. Kamiya couldn't believe it. He said a goblin lord should not be showing up this early in the game. Meanwhile, the goblins went beast mode and started pushing their way through. Lila saw Asel struggling to fight with his crappy, almost broken sword, and her mom instincts kicked in. While everyone else was fighting off the fence, she just dipped. She ran off with a sword in her hand, heading straight for the front lines. One of the goblins busted through, so our hero shouted a warning to everybody nearby. Anemone realized things were spiraling out of control and told her squad to get down from the watchtower to help. They all jumped, but one of her guys landed wrong and hurt his leg. Screaming in pain, she dragged him over to the people behind the fence for help. But then she saw Lila sprinting past with a sword. She called out her name, asking what the hell she was thinking, since she was running straight at the monsters. Anyway, now, Lila didn't make it far before a goblin blocked her path. She totally froze. But the hunter girl, who is just built differently, shot the goblin right in the head and took it out. She walked up to her, demanding to know what had gotten into her. Asel's mom explained she had to give his kid the good sword she was carrying, since his own weapon was trash and would probably break any second. Anemone was shocked, but didn't waste time. She yelled at her squad to fall back, then told Lila to keep going forward, while she covered her. She ran alongside her, firing arrows to hold back the goblins. Once she was clear, Anemone jumped back to the fence and climbed up, scanning the battlefield. She could tell things were about to get way worse. At this point, the frontline fighters were really struggling. The goblins were getting stronger, and nobody expected that. Kamiya told his crew that the Goblin Lord was the reason the goblins were suddenly so tough. He was still in shock. A boss monster at this stage was just unfair. Some of the fighters found themselves face to face with the Goblin Lord itself. That thing raised its giant weapon and slammed it down. The attack was so insane that it crushed some goblins along with the humans, and it sent a bunch of the fighters flying backwards. Right there, Kamiya quickly called out, asking if anyone could still stand. Somehow, Asel and one other dude pulled themselves up and ran to help him. The Goblin Lord lifted its huge mace for another attack, swinging it right at our boy. And just as it was about to hit, something just clicked in our hero's head. He parried the hit. For real. Everyone was shaking. He couldn't believe he pulled it off either. He said it was just a normal game mechanic, but actually doing it in real life was totally insane. The Goblin Lord felt that parry and got super mad. It roared again, sending another wave of goblins charging forward. Asel and the rest jumped in front of Kamiya, telling him they'd hold the line and he should hurry up and take down the boss, since everyone was getting tired. Our boy didn't waste time. He told everyone to leave them with this giant goblin and told them to handle the others, but they need to be quick. After that, Kamiya dashed right at the Goblin Lord, dodging another attack and parrying again. But he knew a long fight like this would be way too risky. He needed to finish it quickly. That's when he heard Leafy call his name. He told her to bring up the ring console. The cute fairy did it, and our MC checked the settings. He saw the AI balancing was still on. She asked why that mattered, and he pointed out the ring modifier was active. Even better, the AI was overloaded, so he could trigger all criticals. She just stared at him, totally confused, because she had no idea what all critical meant. So, in this game, a critical hit is basically an attack that ignores defense and does double damage. Super OP stuff. Normally, the game rolls some dice, well, RNG, but same thing, to decide if you get a critical. But guess what? There's a nasty little bug in the system that Kamiya never fixed. If someone manages to parry 15 attacks in a row, the AI freaks out, the memory gets overloaded, and suddenly, every single attack turns into a critical hit. Total madness. But Kamiya left the bug in because nobody could pull off 15 parries anyway, not even the testers. Leafy's mind was blown when she heard this. She just couldn't believe it. But our MC finally had a sliver of hope. So, he set his sights on that insane goal. 15 parries in a row, right now, against the biggest, ugliest boss goblin ever. So, he started baiting the Goblin Lord. He wanted that monster to swing at him again and again. And every single time, he managed to parry the attack. He counted everyone in his head, totally focused. Acel, watching all this chaos, thought our protagonist was on the verge of getting stomped. He yelled out for Kamiya, probably thinking the poor guy had lost his mind. But our boy told him not to stress. He actually had a plan. Of course, nobody could tell what the hell he was trying to do. Meanwhile, Lila finally reached the front lines. She saw her son, Acel, struggling with a goblin, his weapon falling apart. Our boy kept taunting the Goblin Lord, dodging and parrying like a total lunatic. He got to 13 parries, sweating, but he knew if he just kept it up, he was golden. Then, disaster almost struck. One goblin broke free from Acel's defense and charged straight at Kamiya, right. As he reached the 14th parry, the kid sprinted after it, and just as the goblin was about to land a hit on our boy, he jumped in, smacking it on the head, but his sword snapped in half, leaving him wide open. Lila, seeing all this, totally clutched up and tossed a new sword to her son. With the fresh weapon, Acel finished off the goblin, just in time. He grinned like a total maniac, because now it was the time. He told his team to just wait a second, that everything would be over soon. The second he said that, he dashed straight at the Goblin Lord, moving like a blur. Every single attack he landed was critical. He just shredded the boss, slashing its body in a wild flurry, and then finished it off with a final strike right to the neck. He even jumped off the Goblin Lord's body and stuck a superhero landing, just for style points. Bro, the giant goblin had no chance. It toppled with a thunderous crash. The rest of the goblins saw what happened and immediately freaked out. They knew they were screwed, so they just turned tail and ran for the hills, leaving the fight behind. Waldo and the other survivors couldn't believe what they'd just seen. Kamiya had actually soloed the giant boss. Lila and Acel stood there by the fallen goblin, smiling like they'd just won the lottery. But man, the game world is never that easy. The Goblin Lord wasn't completely finished. With its last bit of strength, it lunged right at the kid. His mom didn't even hesitate. She dove in front of her son, taking the full hit. The monster clawed her up badly. Our boy was shocked. He thought the fight was over and never expected the boss to get back up. He rushed in and delivered the real final blow, making sure that thing was dead for good. But it was too late. The Goblin Lord had torn Lila's chest open, and all Kamiya could do was watch as Acel collapsed next to his mother, crying his eyes out. With her last breaths, Lila told her son that she was going to see his father, and she asked him to keep telling her lots of his stories one day. And just like that, she was gone. The poor kid screamed in pain, totally broken. Everyone in the base fell silent, the whole victory just swallowed by grief. Right after that, the system message popped up, congratulating them for clearing the Stampede quest. But that was the most bittersweet win ever. Everyone was crying while the game said congrats. The next morning, Kamiya stood alone by Lila's grave, lost in thought. Then the cute fairy showed up, saying she had no clue why a Goblin Lord appeared. There was nothing weird in the game settings that she could find. She did remind him that he still had the power to tweak small things in the game, even though he'd lost his full admin status. She kept talking, but he wasn't really listening to any of it. After a while, our boy finally said what was on his mind. He admitted he'd been arrogant, thinking that just because he made the game, he could handle anything it threw at him. That false confidence cost them everything. He blamed himself for Lila's death, saying she was never supposed to die like this. Leafy tried to cheer him up, reminding him that the only reason anyone survived was because of his insane genius. But our hero just couldn't let go of the guilt. He was the one who created this nightmare, so every bit of suffering felt like his fault. Totally overwhelmed, our boy told Leafy he needed to be alone and walked off. Later, the hunter girl found him sitting by himself. She asked what he was doing, but he didn't say a word. So, she just aimed her bow and shot down a bird flying overhead, right in front of him. Kamiya was stunned. Then finally he could say what he thought. Isn't it suck that they have to risk their life just to survive in this world? But then Anemone explained that in this world, every day was a fight to survive. Sometimes you take lives, and sometimes lives are taken away from you. She said this while pointing to a bird that had died from its arrows. She also said nobody was really to blame. It's just how things worked here. Our hero wanted to argue, but he just couldn't find the words. Before waiting any longer, she told him to come with her because she wanted to show him something. Then, she led him all the way to the training ground. And, get this, Acel was already there, going full beast mode. That kid was sweating and swinging a sword like he hadn't just lost his mom the day before. Anemone explained to our hero that the kid had been training basically non-stop ever since the funeral ended. Kamiya could not believe his ears. She told him that Assel said he wanted to become strong and gather lots of stories so he could tell them to his mom. That was his whole reason for working so hard. Then, the dude who sparred with the kid called for a break because he was out of gas. Assel turned around and did a double take. He was stunned to see our boy there. But hey, he just broke into a big smile, ran straight up to our MC, and asked him to spar. The kid made it clear he wanted to get way stronger so he could tell his mom all kinds of stories, and he wasn't about to give up now. That hit Kamiya right in the feels, bro. He said Assel was totally right, grabbed a sword, and told the kid he wouldn't be holding back. The kid got pumped and charged right at him. And for the first time in a while, our MC snapped out of his moody funk. He realized that everyone in this world, even the so-called NPCs, were living for real and fighting through the pain harder than he'd ever thought. So, he decided he couldn't let them down. He needed to show these people a life worth fighting for. Things switched up after that. Out in the woods near the base, two dwarves were on the move, a grumpy old master and his apprentice. The master found a bent arrow on the ground and told his apprentice that he could sense some leftover mana in it, which meant it had been made with a magic stone. The apprentice was floored, but the master said this might finally be the lead they needed. The two of them followed the clues and soon ended up nearing the base. Back at the village, everyone was busy with chores when the dwarves rolled up to the gate, looking all serious. Leafy came up to Kamiya and told him about the new arrivals, but our boy didn't even blink. It was like he'd totally expected this. The master dwarf, Dorn, marched right up and demanded to see the head of the village. His apprentice, Ginger, tried to chill him out, saying that a little politeness wouldn't kill him. Our boy stepped forward and told him he was the guy they were looking for. The master dwarf wasted no time and bluntly asked him if he had any mana stones. Ginger looked super embarrassed by how direct his master was. He explained that they were traveling dwarves, looking for rare materials, and they'd heard there were mana stones here. He said they just wanted to take a look at them. Then, Kamiya told the dwarves that they had just started making dinner and suggested they sit down and eat together. He said they could keep chatting about the stones during the meal. The blonde kid, Ginger, was hyped and accepted, but his master just acted like he didn't care about food at all. A little while later, everyone was at the dinner table. Ginger was blown away by everything, looking around like a tourist at a theme park. Our hero, who knew these dwarves were legit craftsmen, was already plotting. If he could recruit them, he could finally upgrade the village's gear and maybe get some magic tools made that were out of his league. While they ate, Kamiya asked Dorn if it was the mana stones he was interested in. He said yes, no hesitation. Ginger explained that they were actually searching for something called the Philosopher's Stone, a legendary material. Supposedly, some weapons out there were made with it, but even among the oldest dwarves, nobody had ever seen it. They weren't even sure it was real. The blonde kid said that for craftsmen, chasing down the Philosopher's Stone was the dream, the ultimate rare material. The master dwarf added that they know magic power is apparently involved in its refinement. Our hero knew the truth, though. There really was a Philosopher's Stone in the game, but it was locked as a reward for a super high-level raid quest, totally impossible to get in normal play. Basically, Kamiya was the only guy who actually had access to it. The Philosopher's Stone wasn't just a lump of mana, it was something deeper, the relationship between power itself. Our hero asked if it was the magic that became the reason why they want the mana stones. Ginger trying to fix it by saying the magic stones, or they called it arcanite, is extremely rare. He also added that maybe these stones are very important to everyone in this village, but he said they just wanted to see it for reference. Since they only needed to check it out, Kamiya thought it was no big deal, but he made a deal. If they wanted to see the stone, they'd have to forge some weapons for his crew. He explained that the village was under attack by monsters almost every night, and if they wanted to survive, they needed top-tier gear. The blonde kid excited, meanwhile his master grumbled, but agreed. Our boy said he'd show them the stone after dinner, but he was already stressing about how to convince them to stick around for good. After they finished eating, our MC took the dwarves over to a cabin and showed them the mana stone. But the master dwarf was not impressed. In fact, he called the stone ugly and told Kamiya this was not what he was searching for. Ginger was shocked by how fast his master figured it out. This so-called mana stone was really just a doorway for mana, not real material. Dorn saw through it instantly. And our boy had to admit, the old dwarf was sharp as hell. The mana stone was just an interface for the player, not something you could actually use or forge with. Dorn started out by thanking our MC for showing him the mana stone, but he made it clear that this thing wasn't any kind of clue to the Philosopher's Stone. he was after. He said he and Ginger would be leaving first thing in the morning. That news hit the blonde kid so hard, the poor apprentice looked like he just got slapped. Meanwhile, Kamiya tried his best to change the old man's mind. He told him he was totally welcome to stay longer, and that the village even had a free workshop, with all sorts of materials they could make using the mana stones. He said the production setup here was basically perfect for craftsmen like them. Still, Dorn just shut him down. The dude was stubborn as a rock. When our boy realized there was no convincing this guy, he could only sigh in disappointment. Since the dwarves were still planning to leave, he reminded him about his promise to make weapons for the villagers, since monsters were definitely coming again that night. He told the two dwarves he would show them to the workshop, and they could use anything they wanted there. Meanwhile, Leafy was freaking out about the idea that the dwarves might never join them. He agreed, saying, the master dwarf only cared about the philosopher's stone. Anything less was just a waste of time for him. But our hero had a different read on Ginger. He could tell the younger dwarf still had that spark, the kind of hunger that made someone want to see the world, notice their work. He totally got that. He remembered feeling the same way back when he started making games, desperate to see if his skills could actually matter to someone. Kamiya figured that if Ginger saw what he could really do for the village as an artisan, the kid might want to stick around. That night, just as Kamiya predicted, monsters attacked the village. The blonde kid looked absolutely floored to see real monsters coming at them. While the fighting broke out, some archers started talking about the new arrowheads. They said the things sliced right through the monsters, and the piercing power was insane. The blonde kid overheard them and said he could have made them even more accurate if he had more time. But the archers just said they were already super grateful. His work was saving lives. While he listened, he kept watching Waldo fight. He started thinking that a big guy would be way better with a big, heavy sword. Then he noticed Acel's moves and figured he could fix the balance on his sword to help him fight even better. The guy was lost in all these ideas about how he could improve things, not realizing that his master was watching him the whole time and could totally see that this blonde kid was getting attached to this place. In the middle of the chaos, the cute fairy asked our boy if he thought Ginger would stay. He said words probably wouldn't convince him, but from the look of things, the blonde kid was already having too much fun to just walk away. The next morning, Ginger stepped out of the workshop, ready to leave. But as he walked past, one villager thanked him for his help the night before. Then another came over, telling him it was thanks to him they beat the monsters so easily. He couldn't help but smile and say he was happy he could help out. Then, Waldo and Acel rolled up. Both talking about how awesome his sword was, the big guy said it was crazy sharp, and Acel thanked him for fixing his sword's balance, saying it felt way easier to swing now. Waldo even gave him a playful smack and joked that he should just stay in the village to make him a special weapon. But the kid Acel told his buddy that Ginger and his master were leaving today. The big guy was shocked and said it was a real shame, but he wished them luck, telling Ginger he was sure their paths would cross again. That whole conversation clearly got under his skin. He was still thinking about it when our boy showed up, asking if he was really leaving already. Ginger said yeah, his master only had eyes for the philosopher's stone. Kamiya cut to the chase and asked what he really wanted to do. The blonde kid looked lost for a second, so our boy pointed out that he could see the philosopher's stone wasn't the only thing the kid cared about. He told him straight up that life in the village was rough. Monsters attacked every night, and even with magic stones, supplies were limited. He admitted they were desperate for help. He said that was exactly why they needed Ginger. His work literally meant the difference between life and death for these people. He reached out his hand, telling him to join them and stay. Before the blonde kid could even answer, Dorn came out of the workshop, saying they were packed up and ready to leave, and he said thank you to our boy for his hospitality. Meanwhile, Ginger took a deep breath and told his master that he wanted to stay in the village. Dorn stopped in his tracks and asked if he was really serious about that. Ginger said he was. The master dwarf sighed and told him that if he was going to stay, he'd have to prove himself by forging a weapon first. The blonde kid was confused, but Dorn said he couldn't let someone with no skills just wander the world. He had to prove his worth. Ginger nodded and got right to work, forging something special. While the blonde kid started working with his life, our boy asked if he needed anything, since he could supply materials by using the magic stone. But Ginger shook his head and said he wanted to do it with his own hands. Otherwise, it wouldn't mean a thing. Our MC just smiled at that and left him to do his thing. Our boy knew, sometimes you just have to let someone show what they're really made of. Anyway, now, the story picked up right as Ginger finished forging his new sword. His master came over to check it out. And you could tell he was serious, like full-on craftsman mode. He took one look and said that he could see the sword was made for humans to use, not dwarves. He started giving him a little life lesson, saying, a second-rate craftsman only looks at the object, but a first-rate one looks at the people who will use it. Since the blonde kid made this sword thinking about the people here, Dorn could see what was really in Ginger's heart. Then, he said that everyone had their own fire inside them. He had his, and Ginger definitely had his own too. He told him not to let that fire go out, and to keep following whatever drives him. The blonde kid looked shocked, asking if this meant he'd finally passed his master's test. But his master didn't say anything else. He just turned to Kamiya and said he was leaving. And that kid is in his care now. Then, he headed out into the forest, and the blonde kid bowed low to his master, thanking him for everything so far. Meanwhile, Leafy and our boy could not stop smiling. They finally had a real craftsman in the squad. The cute fairy started talking about how they had to upgrade their production base now. Kamiya agreed, and said it was time for the next step. So, RMC went ahead and bumped the base level all the way up to 8. Ginger was totally blown away when he saw the magic stone in action. The new upgrades were insane. The outer walls and the workshop got a huge boost, and when he walked inside his new workspace, he just stood there, gawking. Our boy told him the whole workshop was his now, and he could use it any way he wanted. Ginger looked super hyped and said he had a ton of ideas he wanted to try out. After they left the workshop, he told Leafy that getting Ginger on board was a massive win, especially with all the battles coming up. He pointed out that everyone's gear was still pretty trash, but with him around, that was about to change. The base level up also meant the magic stone could store way more resources. He said he wanted to use the next fights to start stockpiling mana. He let Leafy know he was expecting a special girl to show up. Now that their base was so strong, yeah, our boy had plans. Because the blonde kid joined the crew, all their equipment started getting way better, and suddenly, the villagers didn't get wrecked during every fight. He even helped Anemone up in the watchtower, acting as her support. With only 3 days left before the next monster stampede, Kamiya knew they had to pick up the pace and keep powering up the village. On the 11th day, Ginger stood in the middle of the village and called everyone over. He had a huge pile of clay sitting out, and people looked at him like he'd lost his mind. He explained that these were golems, magic dolls, that could move on their own. He said golems could fight alongside the villagers and copy whatever their master does. Like, if you set a swordsman as a golem's master, the golem would use a sword too. They weren't as good as the real thing, but they were super useful for bulking up their fighting force. He said he always wanted to build golems, and now, thanks to the magic stone, he could finally do it. But the hunter girls got curious and asked if they really moved and actually can fight. Ginger said, yeah, once you set a master for them, they fight just like that person, only weaker. One of the villagers jumped in to ask if the golems could help with chores, too. He said for sure, basically, you could use them for anything. Suddenly, the golem's eyes lit up, and he was like, what the hell? Why are they reacting right now? He wondered if there was some other source of mana nearby. Just then, someone shouted that a stranger was coming. Everyone got tense, but soon, a mysterious person arrived at the gate. When the hood came down, it turned out to be an elf with a big, bright smile. She introduced herself as Yulisha Weibwald and suddenly dropped a bomb. She was there to challenge the village leader to a duel. Turns out, she was the daughter of the Queen of the White Forest. Kamiya didn't look surprised though. That guy clearly knew this event was coming. He realized that reaching base level 8 meant he'd met all the requirements to recruit Yulisha. Then, he stepped forward and announced he was the leader. The elf told him that if he lost, she'd become the new leader of the village. She said not to worry, because she would definitely make the village awesome. Our boy just grinned and asked what she was going to bet if she lost. She acted cocky, saying there was no way she'd lose, but just to be fair, she promised Kamiya could ask her for anything if she did. Our MC double-checked if she was really not going to take back her words, and she swore on her mother's name. Leafy looked nervous about all this, but our hero was ready. He stood tall, getting ready to face her in this crazy new duel. As Kamiya and Yulisha got ready for their big duel, all the villagers quickly moved behind the fence. No way they wanted to get caught up in that chaos. Sylvan, of course, barely seemed to care. Dude was just chilling with his wine and asked who the new elf girl even was. Ginger explained that she came from the White Forest clan, and he said those elves were super mysterious and usually kept to themselves. When Waldo remembered the elf bragging about taking over the village if she won, he started cracking up, saying it was basically just survival of the fittest. Now, once everybody was set, our hero told Ulisha how things were going to go down. He said they would start the duel as soon as the coin he was about to throw hit the ground. The whole crowd watched as he tossed the coin, and right as it landed, the elf didn't waste a second. She launched a wind attack straight at him. But our boy was ready. He dodged fast, which totally shocked the villagers. Half of them didn't even see what happened, since it was their first time seeing magic like that. The blonde kid quickly explained to everyone that Ulysses had just used attack magic, and by the looks of it, she really knew what she was doing. The villagers started getting worried, thinking his leader was in big trouble. But honestly, the elf seemed kind of impressed that he was still holding his own. She cranked up the speed, firing off more magic, but Camilla just kept dodging everything she threw at him, like an absolute legend. Thing is, Ulysses was kind of a noob killer character. Her wind spells were super strong and hard to see, so if you didn't know how to read her, you'd lose, for sure. And then, you'd miss the chance to recruit her. But our MC wasn't worried at all. He said he could predict her attacks just by the way she swung her wand. While he was thinking that, another spell came flying at him. But this time, he blocked it with his shield. Now, that totally threw her off. She'd never seen anyone block her attack like that before. Ginger's iron shield was just too tough. Her magic was great against live monsters, but it couldn't break through good gear. She was still shocked, and our boy rushed in close. Just as he got near, she shot up into the air, using wind magic. The villagers freaked out when they saw her flying, and started wishing they could pull off moves like that. The elf started charging up a seriously crazy spell while she floated up there, and Camilla knew if that hit him, he'd be toast. She started making fun of him for coming straight at her, but she had no clue our protagonist had a plan. She finished casting her spell and tried to blast him, but suddenly, boom, the magic fizzled out. She looked so confused, like, what the hell just happened? Before she could even react, our hero whipped out a sling, snatched her out of the air, and dragged her down. He pointed his sword at her to make it crystal clear. He was the winner here. Right then, he told her that her fancy high-level magic didn't work because the mana stone in the area was way too weak, basically. There just wasn't enough juice in the air for spells like that. Now that Ulysses couldn't move, he announced his victory. Even the elf admitted she lost, but she still looked like she'd just seen a ghost, wondering how she could lose to some guy who didn't even use magic. Then Camilla hit her with a reminder about her promise, and she almost passed out when she realized she really had to do whatever he said. Obviously, he told her to join the group, and she had zero choice but to go along with it. But he didn't stop there. He also told her to clean up the mess from their duel, since she broke a bunch of stuff. But no, other villagers also help her in cleaning though. After that, the cute fairy jumped in, saying it was awesome to finally have a mage in the squad, and Camilla agreed. With Ulysses around, they should test out some new tactics in the next fight. Later, he took the crew into the forest for some experiments. While they walked, he asked Leafy if she had any info on what was happening in the real world. She said she couldn't see anything over there, but she did know that the game master had changed. He asked if it is different from the game's original flow because he came to this world, or there is another reason, but our cute fairy couldn't answer that. Then, our hero said he was dead set on reaching level 100, and Leafy asked why he was in such a rush. He explained that reaching level 100 would let him enter the tower. Even with developer mode, there were limits to what he could do, so he needed to get to the tower for more power. Suddenly, Ulysses stopped and asked how much farther they needed to walk. Camilla told her they'd keep going until they found some monsters, because he wanted to test her magic and try out the new golems for tonight's battle. He asked how much magic she could actually use, and she started bragging about her skills. Wind magic, other elements, you name it. But he pressed her for a real answer. She finally admitted she could only do a few wind spells and some movement tricks, because the mana stones around here were all bottom tier. She said she'd be way stronger if she had better mana, making it clear she was feeling seriously nerfed. So, our boy told her he wasn't mad about what happened earlier, but he wanted her to know her limits so she wouldn't mess up again. He wasn't trying to make her feel bad, he just needed her to be smart with her magic, since she was the only one in the village who could actually cast spells. Then Ginger, always thinking ahead, asked our MC if he planned to team up Ulysses with the golems. Kamiya said that was exactly his plan, since nobody else in the place had magic skills. He figured that if they matched the golems with the elf's firepower, the team would have way more tricks for fighting. So, our MC decided to make Ulysses the golem's master, which meant the golem could learn magic from her, even if it wouldn't be quite as strong as her own spells. He told her to put some of her mana into the golems and teach them what she knew. Ulysses was like, fine, whatever, and put her hand on the golem. Magic started flowing out of her, and the golem lit up. Our boy let her know the next step. She could control the golems by imagining what she wanted them to do. She closed her eyes and used magic to jump up into the air. And, just like that, the golems copied her move. They floated up beside her, which honestly looked pretty cool. Kamiya got a little excited and told her to use the same trick against some monster bunnies he spotted nearby. The elf was totally down, since she hated those monsters anyway, and she blasted them with her wind attack. The golems followed her lead, blasting wind, too, and the bunnies freaked out and ran for their lives. She was straight up having fun, so she added a bit of extra style, making sure most of the bunnies didn't even make it out alive. After the dust settled, she landed and admitted the golems were actually pretty useful. Our guy told her that the golems were only as strong as their master, so if she got lazy, the golems would get weak, too. Yulisha just brushed it off, saying she understood, but you could tell she was getting tired of Kamiya bossing her around. Our hero grinned anyway, knowing this new combo would give his crew a nice edge in battle. Meanwhile, back in the real world, things were not looking good for Onohara. The dude was crashing hard. None of his plans were working, so he started thinking he might have to get way more aggressive to fix his mess.